Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Anders Blixt's collection, Dusk and Dawn. So this is a novella titled Dusk and Dawn, along with 3 short stories set in what Blixt calls the patchwork world. So before I really get started, I do want to mention this as a sort of full disclosure thing. I had reviewed one of Blixt's books before, and so when this new collection came out, he specifically contacted me and asked if I would, I guess, do a Goodreads review and a YouTube review of it, so here it is. Happy to do it. So, the patchwork world is really the concept at the core of these 4 stories, the novella and the 3 short stories. And basically, what it is, it's a world divided by almost impassable mountain barriers that section off different portions of this world, leading to the creation of diverse ecosystems, sets of natural resources, mineral resources, etc., cultures, evolutionary adaptations, etc. Some of the realms within this patchwork world seem to be very resource-rich. They're very good at supporting a population. Some are very technologically developed. Some are much more sparse. Sparse resources, sparse populations, limited technology, etc. Some are very militant. Some are very peaceful. Some seemingly focus on a kind of colonial expansion, trying to surpass the rims of their own section. Some are more focused internally, whether that be internal conflict, political struggles, or whether that be sort of trade, mercantilism, etc., within their own space. So, in each of the 4 stories, we get a different world. The reason I say I think is because the short stories are quite short, and we don't really get sort of enough development to fully picture these worlds and to sort of understand their place in this patchwork world. For my money, the short stories, they're individually not bad. There's nothing wrong with them as individual short stories. When you put them in the same collection as the novella, Dusk and Dawn, which is much more developed, has a lot more world building, a lot more character development, more defined conflict, etc., to me, it seems like they're kind of doing different things. The novella is really telling a story about characters that we can become emotionally invested in, and short stories are more like snapshots or vignettes. We get a little bit of character development, but we don't get enough character development or conflict to really be engaged with these characters. And so I would rather it either were just the novella, which I quite like, or a series of short stories that together would give us a sense of this patchwork world by sort of mirroring the content of the world, mirroring that world-building strategy through a set of otherwise maybe disconnected short stories. Um, that being said, I'm primarily going to talk about the novella, which I think, again, is the most interesting, obviously the most developed of these. Um, so this follows a character named Fennec, um, also called Jorin Otshur. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right. Fennec is the illegitimate child of the second in command of a particular city-state and royal house. The problem is that a group called the Commonwealth is conquering the region, I guess, the society in which Fennec lives. Fennec city-state is falling as we open the novella. And so Fennec is an androgyne, I think is the term that the novella uses. So third gender, not male or female. And so she, je are the pronouns. Because she's an illegitimate member of the family, she is the only one that can escape the city without dishonoring the family name. And so she basically becomes the head of this house that is doomed in this attack by the Commonwealth. She's given an advisor who's a sort of monk, guru type figure, and they escape the city. They go to an allied city-state and attempt to basically raise their allies against the Commonwealth for everyone to fight on their behalf, and is largely unsuccessful. But Fennec meets a slave. She's introduced with the name Yellow, but actually her name is Aiden. And they start to form a bond. Fennec gets Aiden as a gift. She offered to buy Aiden, but was given the slave as a gift. And the first opportunity, Fennec frees Aiden. They form a plan, because Aiden is from a different region. And her people had more advanced technology, including military technology, but also medical technology, crop planting, irrigation, agricultural, etc., technology, and so on and so on. But within their world, within their region, her people are outcasts. And so they were attempting to escape from their realm into another realm that would be more hospitable. Fennec and Aiden work out this plan that if they can go to the site of Aiden's crashed skyship, they can get some of this technology. Aiden can signal her people that this is a good realm to potentially come into, and Fennec can use some of that technology as a bargaining chip to bring the other city-states together to fight the Commonwealth. It's a long and dangerous journey, during which time they face a number of challenges. They grow closer together. They have to both fight and outsmart their enemies, etc., etc. And Finally, where we end up is actually with a very interesting twist, I think, because the vow that Fennec takes when she's made head of her household, head of her family line, is either to retake the city-state, which seems impractical, particularly since they discover that the Commonwealth is being aided by other people from Aiden's world who have brought in that advanced technology, or to do something so notable that the historians and the scribes will forever remember the Shore dynasty. So that, and I put it that way specifically, to do something so great because that is how Fennec ultimately chooses to interpret the injunction. What she's actually told is, then I expect you to create such turmoil that the chroniclers will record the last acts of the House of Shore in their annals. Technically, the oath is to create chaos, to do something destructive, basically. Fennec chooses, in the last instances, to interpret this instruction to mean to do something that will be remembered, not necessarily to create turmoil. So the turmoil bit kind of gets left out. Basically, they have recovered Aiden's skyship, and two mystics show up, including the mystic who had been assigned, the sort of monk guy who had been assigned to Fennec as advisor, counselor, whatever it was. Fennec and Aiden sort of determined that he was plotting something, and so they abandoned him. So he shows up with this older monk. This guy tries to manipulate Fennec's mind, and here is what she says to him. You tried to ensnare me. You failed. Your wars against the Commonwealth will also fail. Their alien weaponry will crush you everywhere. When I swore my oath, I asked my sovereign what I should do if all hope for a military victory was lost. He told me to accomplish other feats that'll make future scholars record the House of Shore in their chronicles. So I've decided to keep my oath in my own way. Again, that's not technically what he said, but it's near enough that it's maybe not entirely a lie if you squint at it. But it then says, I drew my father's revolver, dropped it to the ground, and pointed at Ariane. That's one of Aiden's shipmates. Then Fennec says, her people are soon to come here with new crops. No more blights and famines in our crater. No fourth collapse. I'll work with them. Tichinelli, it's a local warlord who's sort of been protecting them and working with them in exchange for potentially getting new tech. Tichinelli will work with them. Together we'll set off a farming revolution that'll save my people, that'll save everyone. So I think it's really interesting. I think it's really interesting that the idea is a farming revolution, that it's an agricultural revolution, not in the sense of like the agricultural revolution in which Homo sapiens on our planet went from pastoralists, nomads, hunter-gatherers to agriculturalists, or some of us did at least. But in the sense of the primary goal of technology doesn't have to be destruction. It doesn't have to be military conquest or martial violence. It can be creativity, productiveness, and productiveness with a non-violent end, with a humanitarian objective. And I think that's a really, really nice twist. Particularly since one of the things that I was thinking about as I was reading this novella, we find out at some point that the Commonwealth has gotten tech from Aiden's world, right? So it says here, this is Fennec reflecting. Now I know the Commonwealth's terrible mortars, their agricultural innovations, their gumption to take on the rest of the flatlands. Outworlders have helped them change the rules of the game, and that's why we keep on losing. What I was thinking with this, and I don't know that this is an intertext necessarily, I don't know that this is something that influenced Blixt, though it may have, is the Star Trek original series episode, A Private Little War. In that episode, which was a commentary on the Vietnam War, basically, the Klingons give flintlock rifles, or flintlock muskets originally, to a group on a fairly peaceful but not particularly technologically advanced planet, and the Federation ends up providing weapons for the other side. And the idea is to create a balance of power so that neither side can wipe out the other. It's a controversial decision within that episode of Star Trek. On the one hand, you have Kirk, who thinks that this is the ethically right thing to do, even though he doesn't like that this is the situation. On the other hand, you have McCoy, who's really the sort of counterpoint to this, the anti-war voice in this, who basically says this is an evil thing that we're going to do. We are not going to get peace like this. What we will do is doom this planet to generation after generation of war. And Kirk's argument is ultimately that it has to be done. There is no alternative that does not involve the genocide of one of these groups. Blixt takes that kind of setup, right, where one side has gotten advanced technologies, military technologies, from an outside source that has disrupted the balance of power in this civilization, and the other side has the option to get those technologies. But ultimately, Fennec doesn't choose that. Fennec chooses an alternative option. Rather than fighting fire with fire, Fennec chooses to eliminate the scarcity that drives the conflict fundamentally. I think it's a really, really interesting twist to the story, the end of this novella. And I think it's really, really good. Ethically, very, very good.